Next up on our little refresher tour here at this part of the course is all about DHCP reservations. Now let's talk first about what exactly a DHCP reservation is. It is a permanent IP address assignment. Now that means that a specific IP address will always be assigned to a specific DHCP client. An even more simple way of saying that is every time I turn on my machine, it will contact the DHCP server, but the DHCP server will always give it the same address that I've specified with a DHCP reservation. Now, how does that exactly work, and how does that client always get the exact same reserved address? Well, the reservation that I create in my DHCP server is based on the MAC address of the client machine that's requesting that IP address. So what happens when a client machine requests an address, it checks the MAC address and it says, is this MAC address part of the reserved section? And if it is, it matches that MAC address up with the IP address that should be provided for that particular machine, and that machine gets that particular IP address. Now, some of you may already be thinking, well, hey, wait a minute. If that machine always has the same address, isn't that the same as a static IP address? Well, yes and no. Let's talk about some of the similarities and differences. When we talk about a static IP address, we're talking about an IP address that is manually set, manually entered and configured on each device. Usually it's a machine. Now, most often, we will assign static IP addresses manually to things like routers, servers, those sorts of things. Now, when we do that, anytime we need to change that address, we have to manually go to that machine and manually change the information on the device. Now, that's a hassle. It can become problematic in large networks. If we move that machine to another segment, we have to manually change it and adjust the settings so that it can now communicate on that new segment. There's always a chance we're going to fat finger something and not get it right. And with a DHCP reservation, the address behaves as if it's static, but we can manage all of our reservations from a single DHCP server location. So if we want to change anything, we can go into that one place and change it, and we can change 5 or 6 machines right there in that one location. So it is a lot more convenient. But there is a gotcha here with these DHCP reservations that you need to be aware of, both in the context of this certification exam and in real life. There are some services out there. Teredo, the IPv6 transition service, is one of them, and there are others out there that require static IP addresses. So just keep that in mind. There are some things that simply won't function properly just based on the DHCP reservation. So keep that in mind. But for the most part, a DHCP reservation is a way to make sure that the same client gets the same IP address every time.